everybody. Hi, actors from Falsettos, and hello to the rest of the world out there that we can't see, but we believe you're there listening to us somehow.
We have to.
We need to believe in
We
it.
have to believe in something.
That's right. Hey, why don't we, we'll introduce ourselves. I'll start and then we'll go alphabetically by first name. We'll see how we can do with that. I'm Nick Bowling. I'm the director of Falsettos. I'm the associate artistic director at Timeline Theater. I use pronouns he, him, and I'm going to be moderating tonight. Who's next?
Jack Ball.
Jack Ball. Yeah, first name.
I'm Jack. I'm an actor in the play. I play Whizzer.
Great. And how about you?
And I am Jack's son. That's my name, not my relation to Jack. I play Mendel and I use he, him pronouns.
Great. I think it's you, Bockel.
It's me. I'm Sarah Bockel, and I play Trina, and I use she, her pronouns.
Hello, I'm Sharriese Hamilton, she, her, and I play Dr. Charlotte. And my child is biting my finger, so excuse me.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name's Stephen Schellhardt. I use he, him pronouns, and I play Marvin.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you all. We haven't seen each other for, about 3 days now. So it's been not even maybe, it's been a very long time considering we've seen a lot of each other over the past 6 months, 6 weeks, and then some before that too. Not 6 months. It's only been 6 weeks probably. Hey, I thought a place maybe to start with is to talk a little bit about each of your history with this show. About, like, did you know the show? Were you excited about it? Had you seen it before? What made you want to be a part of it? Anything like that. And if you'd like, because there's 6 of you, either just let me, 7 of you, really, 7 incredible actors. Would you guys maybe just tell me, actually 5 of you, just tell me, put a little hand up, or I'll just call on you if that's easier. How about I'll start with Bach. You're on my top right corner, Miss Bockel. You want to start? Yeah.
Yeah. I did not know much about falsettos. I really admire Stephanie J. Block, and so I was very interested in it because she was in it, and I watched the revival on YouTube. So I hope that's okay. That it's illegally on YouTube. And I was really blown away at how unique it was, and I really love William Finn as a composer, and I just thought it was really deep and really moving, and I was shocked that I think it was 2016, how relevant it must have been then, but how especially even more relevant it is now, as it is now. And it made me really excited just to do a callback for it at the time. That's when I was doing my research on it. I was excited to do something so meaty, and it had such an interesting arc for a female character.
You were out on tour, Sarah, when all this started, and had to fly in for your audition, I believe. Is that right?
It actually just worked out. I sent in a tape. We were in Florida at the time. I was on tour, and then we happened to be in Milwaukee the week of callbacks. So I was supposed to Zoom, I think, with you, and I said, "Can I just come in person? I'll drive in." And it just happened to work out that I could be in town for it. So it was kind of a beshert thing, which was cool.
Nice. Is there somebody else that would like to talk about their connection? Stephen, go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, same as Sarah. I was a huge William Finn fan. But Nick, you and I have talked about this. My coming out story is so different than the one of the human I inhabit, as Marvin's story. I came out when I was 11, and I was a musical theater fan. I was like an artist as a kid, wanting to do musical theater. So I was listening to really Falsetto Land, which was a 1-act, and was just moved, and kind of, it's the first time I had seen or heard a story that had any queer love in it at all. for me to see as an 11, 12, 13-year-old growing up in musical theater. So I had a huge love of it. It's rarely produced, so I never ever thought I would get a chance to experience it like this. But man, oh man, has it been present in my life for a long time.
Every time you say you came out 11, I think, how did an 11-year-old boy like do that? How did you deal with it? But maybe that's a conversation for another time. But
Yeah.
were you scared, Stephen, at 11, or were you kind of had a kind of a youthful like resilience or something thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, scared. I don't know if, yeah, something of a belonging, of feeling maybe a fear of not feel. I think I was almost scared for what other people would go through, because I was so comfortable with who I was that I was like, oh, I'm gonna put some people through some tough times trying to figure out what they need to figure out to accept who I was. But I really did have a unique situation. And so playing Marvin, who has been in the closet for 40 years, has been such a unique gift, challenge.
Yeah. I promise I won't ask everybody their coming out stories. Though we could all be here all night on the coming out story, etc. for those of you that did. Is there anybody else who would like to answer that question? Yeah, Jackson, go ahead.
I can answer that question, but it did also sort of look like Sophia was going to volunteer with her comb to also answer that question. My introduction to falsettos was done at Northwestern while I was there. I auditioned for the role of Whizzer, and then and now I cannot sing that part, so I did not book it. But shout out to Jared Zimmerman, who I believe is watching right now, who played Marvin. It was this amazing production full of some of my best friends, and it was one of the first chances I got to see a lot of my friends play such wonderful, complicated, at times unlikable but layered characters, and all of my friends were so good in it, and the music is just stuck with me ever since. So I'm glad that the second time I auditioned for it, I did get to do the play.
That's great. And how about you, Jack?
I didn't know the story beforehand. I knew like some of the songs. I was like, oh yeah, I've heard this or that. And then, but I think the main thing that I loved were just the contrast. The two songs for the Whizzer audition were so exciting to me to do. Games I Play and You Gotta Die Sometime. They're just both such great songs. I was like, oh, if I get to start here and go there, then this is going to be an incredible experience. And so that on top of being able to play a gay character, I think this is the first time I've gotten to play a gay character in a play. So that's just been so thrilling in so many ways and challenging in ways I didn't expect. So many things that, I don't know, sometimes you straight code yourself and then you're like, oh, I can let so much stuff go. And this whole thing, yeah, it's just been such a gift. And I was initially, when listening to it, I was like, God, these guys are they start off so negative with each other. They don't start off in this like great place. And I was so nervous about that. But then I think that ended up being my favorite thing about it, is that you start off and it just goes. You start off in conflict and then you just let the relationships ride out. So it's just kind of a thrill, frankly.
Great. How about you, Sharriese?
I did not know a lot about falsettos when I auditioned. I just remember hearing the music, and I mean, I love Spelling Bee. That's one of my favorite shows, and the way that I get to sing in this is a way that I don't often get to sing. As a Black woman in theater, sometimes they're like, okay, let's go ahead and sing the like all of that stuff, which like is fun and great, but it's sometimes I really want to use my legit voice and want to use just a different part of me that is not always about the Black struggle. And there, I mean, the Black struggle is real and it's out there and there's plenty of opportunities, and I love playing those roles as well. But it was really nice to really dive into a community that I am not necessarily a part of, and get to know more about that, and to again just sing music that feels really good in my voice. It feels really, really good to sing. I remember rehearsing for it. I was just like, oh, I love singing this. That doesn't always happen. Um, and then doing a musical that is kind of, I mean, I remember looking at the song list, and I'm like, well, when does she come in? Because it's like a whole. I'm trying to find the songs that I'm in, and I'm like, there's Falsetto Land and March of the Falsettos and A Day in Falsetto. It's just like there's so many. There, I was looking for like where in the show I was, and that helped me dive in and learn more about the show. And I was like, oh, I really hope I get to do this, because this is like acting, like it's acting within musical theater, which a lot of people who think about musical theater don't think that you're really acting, which is unfortunate for those folks. But like this is a show where it's a really intense subject matter. Oh god. And very exciting. I was very excited to do that. This girl is gonna kill me.
I'll jump off of what you just said, Sharriese. That idea, some people have, we've just for everybody out there. I'm hoping some of you have seen the show, and I've already seen the one question from Jan I see here, and we'll get to the questions. I promise. If other people have questions, please write them in the question and answer area, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Sharriese, you talked about acting. Maybe an interesting question for you all is let's start with this. What's the most challenging kind of acting moment or part of the play for you? Is there a moment you want to talk to Sarah? What's yours? I'm just coming to you because you seem so ready to answer.
I think that moment after Marvin hits Trina into I never wanted to love you is just a big jump. And I think a lot of things in her arc are happening in that moment where she decides to kind of stand up for herself and explain, I didn't ask for this. But also I feel like she has a lot of empathy for Marvin as well in that moment, because she loves him, and she sees that he is heartbroken, and she didn't do an ideal thing. She didn't tell him that she was going to get married, but I think it's just a big culmination of her, I don't know, healing in a way, for her to be able to kind of speak her mind to him. I think Stephen and I we struggled with it. It's difficult. When someone is physical with another person, and I know that it's more abstract, and I think it's smart writing. I like that it's in there. I like that Marvin does like a very not okay thing, because he's in such a terrible place, and that's where the change comes for him. But it's a big, that's a lot of processing in that moment, I feel like, for it to get to where she needs to be.
We may have a few spoilers here, folks. So sorry for anyone that's not. No, it's not just going to happen, I'm sure. It's fine. If you haven't seen the show, there may be a couple spoilers. We'll try to be somewhat aware of them a little bit, and maybe kind of be delicate around the spoilers. But what about others? Sarah, you mentioned that one to me when I first asked you, like, how are you feeling about the show? That was the moment you talked about, and I was like, well, it's really smart that that's where your brain is, because I think that's maybe one of the toughest moments of the show. And it's a beautiful moment to watch every night, how you, and really then everyone around you, including, well, everybody in this room except Sharriese, because Sharriese isn't in that scene because she hasn't even come into the play at that point yet. But everybody else in the room has to deal with that same moment, and I feel like every night you guys negotiate it in interesting and different ways, which is, as you said, in some ways it's a terrible thing, but in a way it's a gift that Finn gave you to figure out how to navigate that every night. Is there anyone else that want to talk about a moment that's kind of a challenging moment in the show for them?
I mean, I will jump in all of what Sarah just said. I mean, I think as actors, we have to find what we love about the roles than the humans we play, and playing a character and a human who's not as likable as on paper or just in the actions that he does. But I think it was for me, it was finding the truth and honesty behind those actions, the why, and also realizing the meaning that sometimes in these horrifying moments of uncertainty or lack of direction, these beautiful moments of actual honesty come. And I think that's what I Never Wanted to Love You is the start of a healing process. So yeah, it's a hard navigation process. This show goes through so much. And like Sharriese says, in musical theater, we're talking about domestic violence and things that are really hard topics to start dialogue around. And I love that this show really does. It's not only started dialogue with our audiences, but it started dialogue with me and myself, and really taking stock of what's important in life and the love of my chosen family and the actions that I have done and wish I could redo, or actually now can go to someone and say, hey, how can I repair this? I think we need to be able to adapt and change. And that has also been a blessing just with this show is the message that it brings.
Is there anyone else that wants to answer that? We don't have to all answer all the questions. We would be here all night. We could go in the opposite direction of, is there
It's an easy show.
What's that?
Easy. Every part of it's easy. It's so
yeah, right, exactly.
We don't need to answer
for Whizzer, it doesn't, none of it matters. Is
right.
there an especially rewarding moment, the opposite of that? Is there, that's not hard, but that just feels so good to play every night? Do you have a thought, do you have a moment like that? I know it's a weird thing to ask. You guys haven't had a lot of perspective on the show yet. That's something to let the audience know, that I think so much when you think about plays, eventually, even after a week, you start gaining a perspective, but you guys just opened 3 days ago. And so in a way, then you kind of did a 2-show Sunday, and then, right, 2 shows on Sunday? Yeah. And then you had a day off yesterday, and now today you're here. So really you had one day to kind of relax, and now here we're asking you to get perspective on things. So it may be hard to do so quickly. But does anybody have a moment? Go ahead.
Consistently rewarding is when we're all watching Jason sing his Hebrew at his bar mitzvah. I think that for me is just a moment where we're all together. We really get to watch this kid in this pivotal moment moving towards manhood. There's just something so I don't know, it grounds me every night. I just think it's one of the most satisfying things to be a part of.
And we should probably give a shout out to our 2 Jasons, to Eli Vandergreen and Charlie Long, who are both incredible.
Unbelievable.
Really, and easily could be here tonight, speaking as maturely as any of us could be, and probably could be moderating this thing better than I. So, but we know that they may be even in the background watching and things. I know that Eli's mom is there. So anyway, they're both really incredible. I couldn't agree more, Jack. It's a lovely moment. Does anybody else have a moment they want to point out?
Sharriese and Elizabeth and I were talking about how much we love the baseball game, which is a number that I was like, I'm gonna hate this stupid number with all its words, and that it's like a perfect song. It's a story. It tells a full story. It's got a beginning, middle, and an end. It's perfect.
And all of us. It's nice to be on stage with all of us, because the way that the show is built, you don't necessarily get to interact with everybody the whole time. And it's, before everything kind of, no spoilers, but before everything kind of goes south, it's a really fun song to sing, and it's a really fun time to be on stage with each other. And it feels really good to eat those words, to be able, I got every single one of those words. I told the story. It feels good. It feels really good.
That's great. Jackson.
I think, and this is so cliche, but I think some of the most rewarding moments for me are literally walking off stage from scenes with my scene partners and looking at each other and being like, we did it. We did that. We did it. We did it. We survived. We got through it. We did it. It feels, there's something about the size of this show and how hard all of us in this Zoom and everyone at that theater has worked, that then it feels like climbing Mount Everest every night, and walking off stage. I know specifically Sarah and I walk off together, and it's even all we finished is Act 1, but we walk off together from I Never Wanted to Love You. Both of us are like, okay, we did it. Okay, we Act 2, here we go. Like there's something about living so fully and largely in these characters, and the amount that each character goes through, that feels really rewarding to like have completed, almost as if a homework assignment.
There's a perception, because you're working on a small cast show, that it's a small show. I got kind of fooled by that. Maybe you guys didn't, because you all probably saw like, I have 8 songs in this show, and I have and 4 that I'm singing in the like. I mean, actually, nobody only has 8 songs. You probably all have at least 20 songs that you're part of, at least. And in some ways, I remember I just got off of a big show with a cast of 24, and in a way, it was so much easier because people sat down and had conversations that were just where they just talked for a half an hour on stage, and they just had sitting and talking. And there's not really a moment. There's almost no moment where people just sit. And first of all, there's no moment that people talk because it's a sung through show. Anyway, I don't know. Did anybody else have that experience where they thought it was going to be less complicated than it ended up being? Or maybe say how what surprised you about what was hard about it? What, like, Jack, for you, what's the hardest part about it?
I think that it's just that you can't ever in a musical, sometimes the scenes come through and you go, great, we can make our own rhythm here, we can sit back a little bit, there's some stuff you can throw away. And then in this, there's just no room for it. So I think what Jackson was even saying about doing Act 1, and then you have to be so just on the moment. You just have to be right where you are every time, that sometimes it feels like it moves so fast, and sometimes you're feel like that took a fucking year. That took, sorry, my language. That took so long. So I think that for me also, all of the group singing is the biggest challenge. I think learning all of the group singing was harder for me than doing the solo stuff. Just because so technical. There's only 6 people singing often, so you got to be on your stuff. I think that was the trickiest part. And I think I knew that going in. I was like, Otto sent us an email like, this is really hard. And then they sent me the score, and I was in Wisconsin, and they sent me the score, and I was like, whoa, this is to see the amount of pages of music was daunting to me.
I also think there's these moments, Jack, that have to be so precise in order to make the next line work.
Yes.
Like someone's responding to your line, and in musicals, a lot of times actors like to do something we call back phrasing, which means they sort of sing a little behind the beat. And as an audience member, you really like that. It feels very natural. But what it can do is then put the person who's behind you, it screws up their entrance and their timing. And this show is filled with that kind of stuff because it's filled with patter and quick responses that literally they have to hear your final word to be able to say their first word, etc. It's complicated.
Right. So you just can't be on your heels at all. So that was a challenge.
Stephen, you got more?
No, I mean, all of that. I will say the backstage show that is happening, the logistics are incredible. Trina Herman, like the backstage crew that has a show that is just as complicated as we do, and we're all working on all cylinders at all times, and knowing that Sarah exits one door and I wait for her to close it, and then I run by for my costume change, and then Jackson's running by to close another door, and it has become this, like you start this show and you do not stop. And there's something really wonderful about that like Jackson said, at the end of it, you're like, I feel like I just ran a marathon, and emotionally and also physically, because we did.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That idea, it really is like, it's a perfect show to be able to, if you could do a noises off version of the show and turn it all around, it'd be really, well, you'd see a lot of probably naked people running around like crazy back there, throwing clothes on and off, and all sorts of shenanigans going
You
God.
just see me being like, Jack, I'm so sorry. I'm so sweaty. I don't like there's just so much that the audience doesn't see that is so great. Yeah.
And a lot of like, there's a carrot. Get the carrot. It's on the table. It's on the floor.
My
Get someone get
favorite,
it.
my favorite was on Sunday, Sarah, when it was like, I have tomato in my eye. So, and then it was that all the whole scene. I just knew that you had tomato in your eye, but we couldn't do anything about it.
Nick, did you
Yeah.
know that I squished a tomato and it went directly into my eye? And I was just kind of blinky for most of I'm breaking down. And then I sat at the table with Stephen and Jack, and you hate it when we talk, but I sat down and I went, tomato in my eye. And
that part of the show has become like a Gallagher comedy routine, because on Friday night, I believe somebody in the front row might have gone home with the tomato splashed down the front of their outfit as well. So yeah, we might need to start handing out ponchos in the front row.
I will say though that like also, I mean, we're doing a play that is full of intense emotions and seriousness, and yet also during the song days like this, which is kind of an upbeat song, but it's a hard moment. Often Sharriese and I are backstage. So it's also like what's wonderful is it's backstage is insane, but also still so full of joy and silliness. And we're not missing entrances, but we have to enjoy each other backstage because on stage it's intense.
Yeah.
I'm just sheer panic back there.
Go ahead, Sharriese.
I was just saying it's also very interesting because this is probably the longest that I'm not on stage for like an hour and 10 minutes. And I'm there at the beginning. And so there's just like a practice of keeping your energy up, but not like completely blowing it completely before you get on stage. Lots of stretching, lots of singing our favorite moments. Elizabeth and I backstage have a lot of our favorite moments. We've also talked about doing a Sarah Bockel cabaret where because Sarah's voice is so incredible, and there are so many moments where like, oh, I love this part where she does this, and like whatever she does, we're waiting for that part. It's a unique challenge of trying to keep your energy up for an hour like an hour and 40 minutes really, because you have like half hour and then you have the first act, and it's really cool to be able to listen to the show backstage, but it's also like you cannot just like they can't rest on stage, we can't really let our minds go backstage, because when you start the first act, I know it feels like you guys are like shot out of a cannon. It feels the exact same way when you've been sitting. Oh, you're on. Oh, okay. It's wild. It's wild.
That's fascinating. Hey, let's talk about the process a little bit. The rehearsal process. We had some astonishing people come in to our process. Would anybody like to, and really also a couple amazing dramaturgs that really took such good care of us. I think they were around about as much as any dramaturg I've ever had working on a show. I think we had somebody in the room at almost all times. And those dramaturgs are Deborah Blumenthal and Molly Sharfstein. They are just incredible. And we're around, and Molly's so funny. I saw her at opening, and I could just see this sort of sadness of like, I'm not ready to let it all go yet. So you all may see her at a lot of shows, maybe Deborah too. They both really loved it. But does anybody want to talk about some of the folks that came in or some of the experiences that we went through? Feel free. How about Jack? Tell us a little something, Jack. Ball.
We had Rebecca Mackay come in, who wrote The Great Believers, and that was just so incredible. And was my internet crazy?
A little bit, but keep going, Jack. You're frozen.
I tried to put it on my hotspot on my phone, but it feels crazy. Okay, well, just like yell if it gets weird. But she came in and it's unstable. Someone else has to talk.
Okay, we'll pass this off to
Let me
to
take over for
Jackson
Jen.
Devin.
Oh,
yeah,
go,
okay, yeah.
Jackson.
Go ahead, Jackson. You want to talk to us a little bit?
Sure, I'll talk to you. I will also say that in our cast, Jack Ball is our hotspot. So Rebecca Mackay came in. She wrote The Great Believers, which I believe actually takes place in 1985. Am I getting that correct?
Yeah,
and
I think that's right.
The amount of research she did for her novel was mind-boggling. And another amazing thing is also, I believe, who got to sit with us and talk to her was I can't remember the name of the class, but it was from the U of C, and it was like queering American theater or something, which was so cool. But she talked about specifically what in the play takes place in New York, but she talked about specifically what it was like to be in Chicago during the AIDS crisis, which is when Chicago is the third biggest country or city in this country, and yet the major spots for the AIDS crisis were New York and LA and San Fran, and yet obviously it affected Chicago too. But she talked to us a lot about her research and the doctors she spoke to, the nurses she spoke to. I believe she might have been the one who talked to us about someone who tested positive at that time and sold almost everything he owned because he assumed he was going to pass away and then didn't. Also, it blew my mind how she talked to us about how when the test first came out to see whether or not you were HIV positive, I mean, it wasn't even called that then, but how often the test came out and they weren't even really pushing it on people because you would test positive and have nothing you could do about it. Which, like, for me, when it, sort of my closest reference to this in recent time is COVID. Yeah, you take the test so you know what to do. This was you take the test and why take the test? It's just going to tell you you're going to die. And like that, it breaks my heart. And it helped me figure out what it was like to go into the hospital scenes that are in the play. I mean, sorry, spoiler alert, Jesus Christ, there's no way not. But just someone else want to talk about the amazing, the Zoom call we did with the survivors, because that was awesome as well. And I'm rambling at this point.
Yeah, Stephen, you want to jump on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I want to shout out Molly and Deborah. I mean, I have never been involved in a process where the incredible dramaturgs have been so involved. It's added so much texture and truth and nuance. But yeah, we were able to Zoom with survivors from many from Chicago, many who have lived in Chicago but now are elsewhere. And yeah, I think, again, every single one of their stories impacted us in various ways. The one that stands out to me was, and Sarah, I think you and I both were like, oh, this is fascinating, the parallels, was a man who came out and had a wife and kids, and came out to his wife late in life, just like Marvin, and sort of had to deal with the ever-changing dynamics of what family is. And what I brought out from it was how much actual hope and joy he had. I know that experience must have been going through that. I can't imagine, but what he has taken out of it in perspective has been really hopeful, and that gave me a lot of information too. And Jack said it at the end. The show starts so in a different place. We all have such a journey, and at the end, it is about, family and chosen family, and that can look so different to everyone. And so that was what was fascinating for his story, how he made that work.
That's great. I'm going to try to get to some of these questions in the Q&A, and then we can maybe come back to other things. Okay, Jan wrote a question. Jan, I should say they were the first person to write one, so I'm going to ask this one. You actors were magnificent in your roles, but I realized you weren't thinking or even living humans at the time the play is set. How did you get into the groove as you prepared for your roles? I love this question. It's one of my questions for you all, because I was alive and well and kicking in 79 and 81, but none of you were even alive yet, right? Is that true? I don't mean to ask actors' ages, but none of you were alive. So let's just say none of you were alive. So what did get you in the groove, or what were surprises about it, perhaps? Or what were you like, wait, is that really true that in 79 that was the case? Were there things like that that you came up with that were surprising to you? I know there were because we talked about so many of them.
I mean, I will say that the surprising thing for me was the time period that this show takes place in, 79 to 81. You know, when I was 11, 12, listening to Falsetto Land, I don't know. I think it's because we assume these beautiful masterpieces about the AIDS crisis, Angels in America, Normal Heart, that they take place in 85, 86, 87. This show takes place in 79, post Stonewall, this liberation of being able to sort of live your truth in a way you never were able to. Book ended with 81, which was the very beginning of this crisis. And so that time period for me, I was like, that's fascinating, because I just assumed this show took place in 85. And it doesn't. It's a very specific time in history, a very important time, but a very short amount of time. And that was something that surprised me in my research for it.
Right. Were there other little surprises? They could be about silly things too, about props or about bits of the world.
Sarah, props?
I was
You don't have any props really to deal with.
I don't touch anything in this play. Only people. It really when Molly and Deborah came in, because we had this whole dramaturgy website, and it had all these different tabs because there's just so many things that are discussed in this play, Judaism and the AIDS crisis, and feminism and the intersectionality between lesbians and gay men at the time, and how they came together to form the LGBTQ movement, and all these different things, but that women couldn't own credit cards until what was it? 79 maybe? It was, I don't remember what year.
I think a little earlier than that, but there was, yeah, you're right. That was a fascinating. Well, and just how new all of that was, I think, was what we were talking about.
Right. And I think, that traditional wife, I really wanted to delve into her brain, and Nick, you encouraged me to watch Kramer versus Kramer, which then I texted you and I was like, well, she doesn't talk at all. Where's her perspective? He looks like such a great guy, but so I was kind of like, well, that's kind of the time. It was kind of forward thinking for the time. And now looking on it from this perspective, it was a great example of parenting in the 70s in New York City with divorced parents, but also just wanting that female perspective, and you had to kind of dig deeper for that.
It helped us, I think, in some ways, that movie, but other things helped us to kind of really try to put our brains in that period and not in modern day. And that's very hard. It's hard for all of us to do, and to not have our own modern kind of emotional and probably, I mean, one may say more kind of knowledgeable, nuanced perspectives on things like gay life and gay marriage, and even a feminism, because we have a very different perspective on all those things. So that's why we've really been trying to kind of open our brains up to that. And I think there's something really important. I'm sure some people have probably done this show and not pushed into the period very much, but it seemed, I guess, because I was a kid in this time period, it felt so important that we have a real sense of what it felt like to be there in 79. I hope people that come and see it that were there have a feeling like, oh wow, this takes me there, and it reminds me of that. The whole show shouldn't just be a museum piece, but there is something very important about understanding that part of it. Okay, I'm going to go to another question by a young person named Eli. Eli asks, what feels different about this show for you than other shows? Good question, Eli. Eli plays Jason in our show, and one of the two Jasons in the show. Does anybody want to answer that? What's different about the show from other shows?
I mean, I'll jump in. I'm sure we all have different. I will say, besides what we've all talked about, besides that it is a show that is completely sung through, it's complex, it deals with complex emotions and humans, and it's really an amazing emotional ride. I just think that, there are some times longevity in a career for an artist. Hopefully you have many, many projects you work on, right? That's the goal, longevity. It's a career. And so you can't not every single thing can be just amazing all the time. But you come across these projects where it feels like things line up, whether it's the production or the place that you're doing it, or the people you're doing it with, or the, you know, and this feels just like one that has lined up. And for me, it is the people I get to do it with. I have never felt so comfortable and trusting of my scene partners on stage. I've never been so in awe. And I think I said this to you, Nick. I felt like we all raise the bar for ourselves because we care so much about the work that we're doing. And it elevated our game. And I'm just constantly in awe of the people I get to be on stage with. And that includes backstage, that includes the designers. It's just every single person working on this worked on it, not only with intention, but with heart. And that is rare, I think, to find all of those ingredients in a project. So
I think that's so unstable, but I'm gonna go for it. But I really remember the first day I was like, every designer came in with just so many points of view, such thorough work that I was like, whoa, everyone's coming to the table with so much specificity and care. It just felt like, okay, we can't not do that every day. And I think that has been something that is new for me on this project. Big time.
Yep. I'm going to come back to the question. Stephen, there's a question about regrets, about feeling. I think this is mostly about Marvin, because it's saying, you know, although the lyrics and what would I do reflect no regrets. That's an interesting statement. I'm not sure if I understand that. Are there moments in the play when you do feel regret? Is it only after Whizzer is gone that you let go of the regret? That's a lot of interesting thoughts there. Do you have thoughts about that, Stephen?
I mean, that's a fascinating question. I mean, I absolutely think Marvin feels regret about things. I do think Marvin feels regret about hitting his wife. I do think Marvin feels regret about being an absent father. But I also think he feels entitled. And I think that does come down to the time period. And I think you have to kind of dig into those things and realize why. But what I do love, and what is so tragic to me, is that the minute that I think Marvin does feel more than he is able to, which is happiness with a loved one and a lover, the world changes and he is left to adapt and so I think, yes, he's filled with regret, but I also think he's filled with enormous hope for whatever comes next, because he's changed. I think out of all of the characters, I think Marvin really does go on the biggest journey in terms of his emotional life, of becoming someone who starts out very selfish and hopefully by the end is a little more selfless. But regret, absolutely, I do. I think as humans, we always do. And regret doesn't have to be negative. Regret, it can just be something that you go through and you think, well, maybe I should have done that differently. But it doesn't have to be. I don't think Marvin beats himself up about it too much until he starts actually opening up his heart to Whizzer.
It was a fascinating process with you, Stephen, because, Sarah, I'm going to let you talk right after this. Just because you and I had a lot of talks about how Marvin, doesn't focus necessarily on other people, on regrets, and he focuses a lot very selfishly in the show. And I think for any actor, that would be a hard thing to do because it's revealing a part of yourself. But a lot of that we thought came from the idea that Marvin's been in the closet for 40 years, living a kind of a lie for everybody else's sake. Maybe you could say it was for his sake too, that it was easier and that was safer, and there was and he was afraid of coming out, or whatever the reasons may be. But that leads to this kind of maybe led, with Marvin at least, this kind of very selfish, self-centered way where in the opening moment of the show he says, I want it all. I still want my wife. I want her to still be there. I want my son, and I want my lover, and I want us to all get along and everybody to be a happy little family. I chose that, and that's what I deserve in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's such a fascinating idea. And it sort of makes sense if you think about someone who's been kind of, in a way, in a kind of a jail or purgatory for 40 years.
Yeah.
Sarah, Sarah, were you going to jump in with something else?
Yeah, I just with the regret question, well, and kind of jumping on Eli's question, I just love how messy this play is and how complicated the characters are, and how I get a lot of I can relate to Marvin, making huge mistakes, like wanting things, like being selfish, like and that's how he learns. I don't know, it's very much the human condition, and I really love how our like anti-hero, I don't know if Marvin's an anti-hero, but I love that our hero of the story is this like really complicated, really flawed guy that's not giving up, that does change, and that does realize what he the depth of his love for people and his family, and how he can come back and rebuild this thing, with Trina and Jason, and also, really show up in the most he could have, like that moment where he walks in days like this, where he walks in and just like in that Angels moment where he could walk out and he decides to stay for Whizzer, and he becomes selfless at the end. I don't know, I just think it's so rare to get that in a musical, and we're really lucky. That's all I want to say.
We've got a question about, and I'll answer this one because it's about why did Timeline decide to do this show at this time? It's funny how things happen. I'll try to give a quick answer to this. Court Theater was one of my homes 30 years ago, almost 30 years ago. I started there as Charlie's dramaturg on a show, then assistant artistic director, then casting director, then associate artistic director. For 3 years, I worked there, and I've had this long relationship with the court. And Charlie recently called me and said, "Hey, do you have a small musical?" Or he even said a small comedy or musical. And I think it wasn't any bigger thought than just, we've got to find something else for our season that's going to balance out some heavier plays that we're doing, etc. And do you have something like that? And I said, let me think about it. And then one of the first things that came to my mind is PJ saw the original full production of Falsettos in 1992, I think, on Broadway. And he loved it, and he brought it to me, and we started talking. So it's funny that PJ is the one who really brought it to my attention. I didn't see it in the early 90s. So I started getting into it, and I said to Charlie, "Hey, I'm really interested in doing Falsettos." And what was cool was Charlie and Angel both had seen that original production in New York. They were both, I think, living in New York at the time. Angel is the executive director at the court. Charlie is the outgoing artistic director, as had been the artistic director for the past 30 years. Anyway, and so it was a magical kind of thing, because my idea was, and Charlie said to me, what makes this important today? And I said, well, for one thing, for your theater, what makes it important is because I think it's a kind of a new kind of it's a gay classic play to me. And it's a gay classic, not just because it's about gay people, because I don't know that makes something a classic, but what makes it so amazing to me is that William Finn wrote these characters who are so flawed, are so problematic even. And the thing is, most of the gay characters I saw growing up were either victims, comic relief. This is going all the way up to like Will and Grace and to Ellen and to a lot of things where gay characters were very one-dimensional. They were silly, they were foppish, they were sort of made fun of, and they were tragic, traumatized victims. And this play actually puts a gay character in the protagonist's seat in 1979. Maybe you could say there's like Lacage that came before this, I think, and a few other things. But even Lacage, it never deals in deeply serious things. It deals in very light, frothy kind of world, mostly. And this play deals in incredibly high stakes, and puts the gay character at the very center of everything. That to me is shocking, and in a way, I wish I'd known about it in '79. I wish I would have read it, when I was that young. I think it would have been Well, I don't know, maybe scary and weird and hard to me in a way, but also I think it's really pretty incredible. So that's one reason to answer why we're doing it now. And then also it's just become so clear that it feels like the kind of show that the world needs right now, that the world wants something that feels like you're looking back, but also feels very much of today, that feels like a celebration of something, but also an examination and a critique of something. And partly it's self-critiquing. It's which one of my favorite things is when a play can look at a group that is perhaps being put down by the world around them, and homosexuals certainly were in this play, but then it looks inside rather than looking out at that. Like, in other words, this show really looks at Marvin and how he himself is dealing with his lover and his wife. It's not dealing with the outside world. This isn't a guy at a job that is getting fired because he has AIDS, or a guy who's getting, that's fighting people that are he's getting beaten up because he's gay. It's not about that at all. It's all about very internal problems, and it's just that makes it very unusual to me. Even today, it makes it unusual, I think. Anyway, so those are some of the reasons. Okay, there's an anonymous. Listen here, almost every favorite scene for you. I found the batting teacher. Okay, hold on a second. Jason Whizzer's batting teacher moment to be really moving and an incredible testament to their love for each other. Jack, do you have thoughts on that? Did you understand what I asked? Jack, are you frozen? Are you just pensive?
Oh,
You're in the best pose to be frozen in right now, Jack. You just look like
just
you're gonna go on thinking forever. Okay, you're back, Jack. Go ahead. Jack, can you hear us? Maybe not. Should we answer? You're on mute, Jack.
Wait, what was the
Let's see.
question? I couldn't-
So I'll try. We'll try, Jack, and that we can move on. Somebody found in the baseball scene found the batting moment where you're teaching, Jason how to bat. Such a really moving and incredible testament to their love for each other. Can you hear this, Jack?
I had exited me out. Could you hear everything I was saying?
No.
Okay,
nothing.
good. Okay, what was the question?
We'll try for our third time. Okay, so this person, the anonymous attendee, said one of their favorite scenes was when you are teaching Jason how to bat at the baseball game, and what a beautiful kind of moving and incredible testament that is to their love for each other. Do you have thoughts about that, about Whizzer and his love for Jason, and Jason's love for Whizzer?
Yeah, I think that it's one of my favorite
Perfect.
relationships in the play, because I think that it might be over. But I just think that it's one of my favorite relationships in the play, because Marvin and Trina are going through all this chaos, and then Jason and Whizzer can kind of be a little bit of a light for him. He can be kind of an adult who they kind of both are like, what are they doing? And I think that scene is one of my favorites, because we get to actually see them bond. We get to actually, like, Whizzer really loves sports, and this kid is not great at them, but it's something that they can be. You see them actually doing something together. They're not talking about stuff. They're not worrying about stuff. They're just kind of two guys hanging out, trying to figure out how to play baseball. And it was great because Charlie really does play baseball, and I don't play baseball. So Charlie had to teach me how to bat, so I could then pretend to teach him how to bat.
And then Charlie has to pretend to be a bad batter, obviously, too, which he does very well also. Hey, Sarah, a question here there was another question from Anonymous that I thought was really funny, but it's disappeared, I think. I thought the tomatoes, oh, you brought it back, Laura. The tomato squish was fantastic, Sarah. I also thought Sarah Trina's not chopping her hand off was an accomplishment. Would you like to talk about the tomato squishing, or or about the fact that you have not yet chopped anybody's hands off, including your own?
It's the least of my worries in this play. I don't actually, it never gets close. And the onions, I have no hand holding them at all. Our fabulous props team, Katrina and Amanda has to do all the prep, and she chops off the end of the onions so they sit just so that when I set them down, they're easy to just chop, and the carrots have already been peeled, and I do the they never get close. Don't worry. We're okay.
Okay, good. I'm going to move on. Hey, Jackson, and this is also for Sarah, but beyond unconditional love, what draws Trina to Mendel, and what does Mendel see in Trina beyond wanting to rescue her? Wow. Who
Ooh,
knew
gee.
that was coming tonight?
I don't know if, I mean, Mendel, I guess, does. I don't know if he thinks he rescues her. I don't think she needs rescuing, because I think part of what he likes about her is how much of herself she already is. And I think, like, from the very first therapy session, it is very apparent both Trina and Sarah's unbelievably deep well of love. It never ends. And Trina loves her family so much, and Mendel is familyless. That's not a word. Sarah, you go.
Oh God.
And Jackson, I was just gonna say, he does say in that first scene, and maybe this is what he figures out later, is he's like, in 5 sessions on my couch, she'll be like new. So he maybe starts there, but then he maybe realizes eventually that she's gonna save him more than he's gonna save her or something.
100%. I do not think he saves her. I think she saves him.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
Sarah,
I think
what do you think?
he listens to her, and he like looks at her and says, like, your pain is tell me what's wrong, like, from your perspective, and like, like, and like assures her, like, you're a lovely girl, like, don't 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 worry, I'll heal. Like, I don't know, it's just like she's so lost in that moment, and he, like a good he's, we talk about how he's, not the best therapist, and he has some HIPAA violations in there, but he doesn't make her feel crazy. And I think she likes that. And I think she really likes that he wants her. That is like the best. She feels really wanted by him. And that's what she really wanted from Marvin and never got.
Okay, I know we're at the end here, but there's a lovely question here that why don't we ask this as our final question, which is, and Lara, you may be writing me things, but I can't see them all. What aspect of this process do you wish to take with you into the next show you do? How about that? Does somebody want to answer that? Hold on. Is that too big of a question to think about?
I mean, there are so
Steve,
many
go ahead.
things.
I knew you
There
were
are
gonna
so
answer.
many things where, I'm going to take away from this. I think we talked about them all tonight, which was lovely. I will say gratitude. I think gratitude for me of just appreciating the joy that it has been to tell a story like this, that it is rare to dig into a show like this, that it is rare to have a cast that feels so close, that it is rare to have a director and dramaturgs and a design team that are so intentional with the storytelling. I'm going to just take that little gem jewel box that we have created with me, so that sometimes along the way in longevity, when the projects aren't as wonderful, I can remind myself of why I do what I do every day, of why I, as a human, we struggle as artists, paycheck to paycheck, to do what we love, is projects like this.
It wasn't easy. It wasn't an easy process. I would say it was hard in some ways, but it always felt like, you all said this, that it felt like everybody's had their heart and their gut in the whole thing and made this process really worthwhile. And even at the hardest times, I think everybody felt like we're all at the end of our ropes because we're all giving so much all the time. I really literally felt that exact feeling from you all many times, and it was an honor to be with you all in the process and in the room. So I thank you all. Ms. Sketch, I'm assuming that's the end of our night, right? We're gonna say goodbye to everybody and thank everybody for coming tonight. It's been a pleasure. Yes, I think that's what she said. It's been a pleasure talking to you guys again and having this little reflection moment. And I can't wait to see the show again over the next few weeks. And if you haven't already got your tickets, go get them. We're playing till December 8th currently. and we hope you will get there before then. So thank you all for coming, and great seeing everybody, and have a good night, folks.
Welcome to Falsetto.